The usual note that the meeting will be live streamed on our website and also recorded. In a moment here, we will have the recording kick off. And if for some reason the live streaming fails, we will endeavor to get that back up and going. If we cannot, we will rely on the recording.
This conference will now be recorded.
There it is. So now that it's being recorded, we would rely on the recording, which we would post to our website, which we do every time, as evidence of this meeting being conducted in public. So I will officially call the meeting of the Calgary Metropolitan Region Board Land Use and Servicing Committee to order. Again, I note that we have a pretty substantial and hefty agenda with a lot of pretty meaty things here for us to discuss. I'm going to start off going to Councillor Giancarlo Caraffa in City of Calgary for land acknowledgement, and then we will proceed with the remainder of our agenda. GC, go ahead.
Can everybody hear me?
You sure can. Yep, you bet.
All right. I've been thinking about the land acknowledgement, and I take to heart the idea that when we do land acknowledgements, we're not just reading some rote thing that ceases to have meaning. We're trying to reflect on what matters. And the first thing I'll note is that the regional board is committed to stewardship of the land. And as Chair Clark just said, we have a lot of meaty items on the agenda today that pertain very significantly to our stewardship of the land and the water. And I think that we should be undertaking our meeting in that regard. With that clearly in mind. The other thing I just want to note is I had the opportunity to take the course through the CMRB a couple of weeks ago on Indigenous economies and Indigenous economic development. And what struck me as we live in an age of truth and reconciliation as Canadians is that I believe where we're heading inexorably as automation, as AI starts to really change our job markets in, the decade ahead, that a universal basic income is going to be one of the things that has to be instituted in Canada in order to prevent people from slipping through all kinds of big cracks and fissures that are going to open up in our economic systems. And we got a preview of coming attractions to what that might look like with the CERB that prevented absolute disaster during the COVID lockdown. But what struck me in this course was how a universal basic income is a very Indigenous and decolonized way of approaching our economy. And so what I've been noodling on since then is that if and when, and I believe it's when, we have to go to a universal basic income of some kind, I think it would behoove us as Canadians to approach that project in a spirit of truth and reconciliation and tie it to our commitments to decolonizing many of the things that we have to in order to achieve truth and reconciliation. With that in mind, I want to note that we are on Treaty 7 land, and this is a very special part of the world that we get to share together and then we get to steward as the CMRB. And long before Euro-Canadians and now Canadians from all over the world came to call this place home, there were three very distinct people who made their home here. The Tsuut'ina people, the Blackfoot people, the Îyârhe Nakoda people. And while their interactions weren't, it wasn't always moonbeams and rainbows and polka dots. It was, there was a very unique circumstance of people making community together. There was, when you juxtapose it with the relationships between other peoples in other parts of the world, which oftentimes devolve into absolute bloodshed. Take a look at what's happening in Ukraine, in the Middle East. That was not the case here. You had very different people with very different traditions who shared the land and made community together. And when we signed Treaty 7, when they signed Treaty 7 with the Crown to allow Euro-Canadian settlement of this land, it was in the spirit of continuing that project. And I think it is critical that we understand that this project of different people working together to build community and to take care of the land and to build a better place, which is exactly what we're doing around this board table. This is a project that began in time immemorial and was enabled by a peace treaty. And I don't think it's very clear that we failed to live up for big chunks of our history to those commitments, but we are recommitting to that here and now. And with that in mind, I think we have a lot of work to do on this agenda that is deeply in the spirit of that building community together. And with that, I complete the land acknowledgement.
All right, Councillor Carraw, thank you so much. It's very thoughtful and like you say, timely. So thank you. I appreciate that. Before we go any further, I want to make a couple of notes, a couple of introductions. I see Doug Lagore is here representing Chestermere. Doug, if you want to just pop your camera on at some point, but just wanted to acknowledge that Doug is here and just say a welcome to your first CMRB committee meeting. So welcome, Doug. I don't know if you want to say a couple of words here. If you wish, feel free. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try and be as intrusive as possible. And I have to leave the meeting at 10 a.m. I apologize. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate you being here. I'll kick it over to Jordan. We have a new hire at CMRB, and Jordan's going to provide us an introduction to Scott Humphrey.
Thank you very much, Chair Clark. Just wanted to let the committee know that in the wake of JP returning to school, we did a relatively extensive search, and we were very lucky to find Scott Humphrey, who's joining us. I'm just going to actually step away and let Scott do the quick introduction himself.
Hi, nice to meet you all. My name's Scott Humphrey. The last 8 years, I've been with Edmonton Public Schools, where I started up and ran their GIS program and did data analytics and projections for them. And excited to be back in Calgary and work with this great team and group. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Welcome. And all of you have now just seen a brief peek behind the curtain. Scott is also running our live streaming. And we have discovered in the past that if he flips his computer over, it can cause untold technical chaos. So that was why we had him step into Jordan's seat there. So welcome, Scott. We're really pleased to have you on board, and it's nice to have a full complement of CMRB staff back in the mix. And in particular, data being a really important area of focus for us. A lot of really interesting and important work to do, and relevant very much to today's agenda. So speaking of today's agenda, we are on to the adoption of the agenda. Everyone has had a chance to have a look at that. It was distributed last week. Any updates, corrections, amendments, edits, comments on today's agenda? And if none, I will ask for a motion, please, to approve the agenda. Deputy Reeve Waldorf, thank you. And we have a seconder. And we've got Councillor Koken. I think you got yourself in there. So any debate, discussion? By exception, anyone wishing to vote opposed to adoption of the agenda? Seeing, hearing none, that carries. Same question for the minutes. Minutes of our last meeting on the 16th of November 2023 have been distributed. Any comments, corrections, changes, edits, amendments anyone wishes to make to that? Councillor Koken will have hand up for to move the motion. Do we have a seconder? And Councillor Robinson, thank you very much. Any debate on that? And by exception, anyone wishing to vote opposed to adoption of the minutes? Okay, seeing, hearing none. On to the environmentally sensitive areas database. Lisa Tipman will lead us through this discussion along with Leif Olson from O2 Planning, our consultant who has helped us craft this database. With that, we'll turn it over to Lise, and Leif, you can join us back with your camera. There you are. Okay, go ahead, Lise.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, members of the committee. We are pleased to present to you today the environmentally sensitive areas database project that we've been working on for more than a year now. This project really kicked off in late 2022 once we procured O2 Planning and Design to complete this work for us on our behalf. O2 also did the 2019 background report in connection with us and TAG members back in the day, and the recommendations of that report inform the conclusions and the setup of this project as well. So it's been a long time in the making, and we're very excited to have such a great and thoughtful product to present to you today. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Leif to talk about the details of how it was put together and the review process and what the outcomes look like. And we look forward to your questions at the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having me. Let me just share my screen and we'll get into this discussion. If you can all see that. So we have been working on this as a general agenda for this presentation. I'll provide an overview of the project itself, some of the key steps of the finalization that we're completing now, some key recommendations that have come out of the work, and then some next steps to discuss. This project really contributes directly to bringing about the vision of the CMRB, providing the opportunity to value the spectacular natural environment that is found within the Calgary metropolitan region. It really is a fundamental component of respecting nature by understanding and valuing it, and being clear about the functions and services and benefits that the natural environment brings to the region. The overall project goals for this shared ESA framework, first of all, are to provide a set of common definitions and shared understanding of what environmentally sensitive areas are, how they contribute to the well-being of the land and the people who live in it, as well as providing an opportunity to standardize the data that is generated and shared and incorporated into the planning process, and provide a consistent delineation and classification so that there's some degree of consistency across the region in terms of what we track, what we understand, and how we talk about the natural functioning of our land. A key part of this is recognizing the ecological functions, services, and benefits that are provided by these natural spaces, and ultimately to inform decision-making and achieve more sustainable land use practices throughout the region. It's not intended to provide any top-down direction about how individual municipalities incorporate this data. The key is to just provide a shared framework that we can use to discuss and understand these important factors. This provides a consistent understanding of the ESAs in the region so that there's a shared definition in order to understand and help preserve the ecological function of these lands, provide that sustainable development lens to ensure that we're not losing things that are going to be either costly to reinvent or recreate, and to generally inform decision-making and foster a sense of stewardship throughout the region for the natural functions of the landscape. As Lisa said, we've been working on this since late 2022, where we had the first startup and outreach in November through to February, where we really looked to solicit existing information from each member municipality, from broader provincial data sets and other sources of information about the Calgary area. We provided the TAG an initial review of scope and level of detail for the project in early Feb of 2023. And then as we compiled the initial environmental data, we conducted a data gap analysis to understand what was missing from our current understanding, and what potential sources we could use to fill that information. And again, a meeting with the TAG in May to review these data gaps and concerns and provide some direction on our approach going forward. Phase 3 then, in summer of 2023, really saw us develop the database framework, the scoring conventions, and the structure to the overall data set that was reviewed by the TAG in September, where we provided an initial ESA scoring and highlighted some outstanding gaps and concerns that we were able to work through with the TAG and really finalize this database over the fall of last year. And then the most recent, following the TAG review of that finalized ESA scoring, we've been focused on a set of recommendations for the maintenance and updating of this database. And we're now right here presenting to the land use and demonstrating the sort of value of this before it goes to the board for hopeful approval in February. The way we structured this was to divide the various kinds of environmental information we had into 4 overarching ESA criteria: that of water, species and habitats, overall landscape biodiversity, and a variety of other ecosystem services that contribute to the function and well-being of the region. Within each criteria, then, we had a suite of sub-criteria. Within water, we focused on riparian areas and flood hazards, wetlands, groundwater, and surface water concerns. Within species and habitats, we focused on sensitive species, focal species habitat. Within biodiversity, then, we looked at more broad estimates of biodiversity that were provided by various sources, as well as identifying rare and unique ecosystems and intact and otherwise unfragmented natural habitat that could be valued by its contiguity. Additionally, we folded in a landscape connectivity analysis that looks at the overarching structural connectivity of the landscape and how that impacts the flow of wildlife through the region. And then within the other ecosystem services category, we looked at significant landforms, including glacial features and other sort of iconic features that really contribute to the scenic quality and the uniqueness of the southern Alberta landscape. We looked at key natural resources that contribute to the ecological and economic well-being of the area, as well as ecotourism and recreation values and culture and heritage. Now, obviously, a lot of these information were dependent on what we know about the landscape, and we recognize that this is meant to be a work in progress and a living document that can be updated as we understand more about how these areas contribute. Looking at some sort of key overarching results, the total ESA score basically, shows how significant the Calgary metropolitan region is from an environmental perspective. The various river valleys and streams of the region, the extensive wetlands, the foothills, which provide a variety of source water protection, headwaters, as well as natural habitats and unique microconditions. Interestingly enough, the highest scoring and the lowest scoring values in the area fall within Calgary. The Weaselhead gets the highest score of any area, and the industrial lands just south of the Inglewood Bird Sanctuary get the lowest score. So it is interesting how varied the landscape is, but as these identified ESAs show, there really are a great deal of very valuable natural areas throughout the region. Looking at the finalization of this work, some of the key updates that we've been able to make in recent months include the addition of the new provincial flood inundation zones. The addition of a regional-wide landscape connectivity measure that shows both the variety of very important pinch points throughout the west and throughout the river valleys, as well as sort of key areas that are challenging from a landscape connectivity perspective that could potentially be managed more effectively. We've also brought in an assessment of recreational trail usage within natural areas. So this is not including the general trails throughout the city or the active transportation connections, so much as the trail provisions within natural areas in particular. We also look at the provincial recreation resources in terms of the experience that are provided by these areas. And we've conducted a wetland complex analysis to look at aggregations of disconnected wetlands that nevertheless have an important hydrologic connectivity that makes them more than the sum of their parts. In our final meeting with the TAG, they flagged a few additional comments, including fixes to some of the park classifications, fixes to the natural vegetation patch size to ensure that it's aligned with the updated regional land cover, and a review of the landscape connectivity approach. Looking further on in terms of key recommendations, as I said, this is intended to be a living document, and one of the key factors will be establishing an ongoing communication framework with the municipalities, with the provincial government, and with non-governmental organizations that maintain regional spatial data to ensure that when updates to any of the underlying sub-criteria are made, we can update these effectively and make sure that this document really reflects the most current conditions in the region. One outcome of this is the provision of a variety of scripting tools to allow the CMRB to efficiently maintain this, and we'll be providing these to Scott. We're meeting next week to dig into this with him, and these will really allow for a very efficient process. Once data sets get updated, we'll be able to quickly recreate the ESA scoring and push it out to the CMRB's maintained public database. Another key factor here is really ensuring that the work done by individual municipalities can be as standardized as possible to easily build on a common data set. So this includes an agreement on sampling protocols, land cover classifications, and data standards to make sure that that the data that is collected by individual municipalities can simply and effectively be brought on board and inform the regional understanding. And really, again, the intent of this is to ensure that growth planning is well informed by a common environmental lens that can provide consistency and certainty both to municipal planners, to development organizations, and to landowners themselves. Another key aspect, given that the jurisdictional boundaries do not of the municipalities don't necessarily reflect the underlying divisions of the natural function of the region, there really is a need for cross-jurisdictional collaboration and regional scale analyses to really understand how the flow of wildlife and resources through the region are well understood. A key benefit here is that we were able to compile a regional land cover data layer that draws on the best available information each municipality has. We did, over the course of this, also make some spot corrections where we knew there had been recent development or changes to land cover that weren't being accurately reflected in the existing data. This obviously is an ongoing process, and that's another factor that really needs to be incorporated is as development approvals happen and as land cover changes, we want to make sure that that regional land cover data layer can be updated over time. A key quality control is to really understand the appropriate scale for this work. We're not looking for this database to become a dumping ground for all the site-specific information that's collected over the course of a development application. And in fact, potentially not even looking for individual municipality data layers that might be really driven at a finer scale than is relevant at the region. And so that's an ongoing task, is to ensure that the data that goes into these analyses is regional and comprehensive and well suited for this sort of task. And at the same time, we want to ensure that we're using the best quality and the finest scale possible without being too fine. And so, recognizing that some of the provincial layers are simply too coarse to really be relevant at the scale of the Calgary metropolitan region. Another key factor is understanding the completeness of various data sets. For example, the Crown vegetation inventory is focused only on the green zone Crown lands. The ABMI species uniqueness data layer doesn't cover the Rockies and the foothills, although that is an ongoing task to update and provide it more comprehensively. But there is definitely an interpretive component that really needs to play into this discussion to make sure that we aren't valuing areas simply because we know more about them, and really understanding where the gaps in our information, our data, our knowledge lie, and use that as a lens to direct further effort where possible. And again, coming back to this notion of data relevance, the data sets need to contribute to the overarching criteria. So when it comes to water, we're really looking to understand areas maintaining the provision of water quality and quantity throughout the region and providing protection against drought and flooding events. So there are certainly other factors, other assessments of riparian quality and things like that that might be valuable for some questions, but are not particularly relevant to this one. So that is a key factor in the ongoing maintenance of this, is to make sure that the data we're putting into it are truly relevant and meaningful. We also want to make sure that when we're adding or updating data layers, we're not overly duplicating the results. And this is always going to be a challenge as we create new inventories and new assessments. The ABMI 2021 wetland data layer compared with the more recent 2023 wetland assessment for the region really highlights that we have identified a variety of additional wetlands in that time. But we wouldn't want to dump both of these data sets into the same bucket and double count the ones that we knew about in advance. And again, as development applications and land cover changes happen, we want to make sure that we're flagging those and updating them in the data layers so that, again, this can be an accurate and relevant data layer and not something that is soon out of date. It will be an ongoing task to do so. In terms of the final steps then, as we move forward, we'll be hopefully looking to the board to approve the project data and the recommendations in February. We'll be transferring the data to the CMRB with clear directions on the update procedure and data agreements. We'll be sharing those data sets back to member municipalities in alignment with those agreements. And I know there's a number of municipalities who have already expressed some real keen interest to get a hold of the data sets to inform their ongoing planning efforts. So we're happy to see that so avidly taken up. And then that would allow member municipalities to incorporate this data into their broad scale planning efforts. the regional scale obviously does not replace site-specific considerations or other municipal planning processes. These ESAs are meant to be a scoping tool that really guides the focus of subsequent finer scale site specific work. These ESAs can be used as a bit of a triage to understand when we're going into the field, what sorts of experts or what sort of knowledge are most likely to be necessary, and to help developers and landowners really understand the potential impacts of their own decisions outside of that municipal planning process, and bring about more sustainable and reasonable decision making of the land cover. Another key extension that we see for this is a public-facing dashboard tool that would allow for people to understand their immediate environment, query their own parcels and properties, and really understand what the values are throughout the system. We've incorporated these sorts of dashboard tools in Edmonton to help guide their tree planting and naturalization efforts. And I think this would be a really useful lens to provide a plain language summary of often very complicated technical information, and using a web mapping and story map tool to both share spatial data as well as create a broad narrative that helps people understand why particular areas are more important than others from individual criteria perspective. And with that, I'll pause, and happy to answer any questions and any concerns. Thank you.
Okay. Leif, thank you so much, and Lise as well. We really appreciate it. We have a couple of folks on the speaking list. I just want to note, I know a couple of municipalities here have more than one representative, and that is absolutely fine. However, we do limit the votes to only one per municipality. Just wanted to make that reminder. So with that, we will turn to Councillor Koken. You're up, followed by Deputy Mayor Petro. Go ahead, Don.
Can you hear me?
You got it.
Okay, good. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. And just for clarity, I was just wanting to make sure that I understood what the document is going to involve. And so from what I've heard, the document is just simply a guideline for municipalities and being aware of where their environmental sensitivities may be in the area. And it doesn't by any means replace the site-specific investigations that would go on and wouldn't restrict development. This is not a top-down document that would restrict the development area. It's the site-specific investigations that would basically offer whether or not development should be restricted. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is meant to inform municipal planning efforts. It's in no way a replacement for it. The decision making remains at the scale of the individual municipalities.
Okay, so that's good, because I was just hoping that it would just be an information source, and so that municipalities could be aware that there's an environmental sensitive need to address it, and more site-specific needs would be offered, and to activate whether or not development was appropriate or not. Okay, thank you for that answer.
Absolutely, yeah. It's really intended to be a bit of a triage tool to, allow municipalities to get further down the desktop level analysis more efficiently.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Don, it's a good point. It was a question I had as well. And I think the slide, I think it's page 31 on the PDF, the quality control scale, that kind of diagram, that the inverse pyramid there, that layer between provincial and municipal, I think is where we're operating here. And yeah, that was a question I had as well. So yeah, good question.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Great, that's the one. There you go. Yeah, folks in Airdrie, Deputy Mayor Petro, go ahead.
Thank you. So through the chair, thank you for the work on this. I think this is a great thing to have that common definition as we move forward with our MDPs, and really have us all speaking from the same language. So I really appreciate the work and the effort that's gone into bringing this forward today. I have a couple questions. First one, I know you kind of touched on this, but I want to go a little bit further. So will staff at the municipal level be able to add data specific to subregions or JPAs with this?
Yes.
So, sorry, go ahead, Leif. I'm sorry, Tina, we're just having just a tiny bit of a tough time hearing you. I think we got the question, but Leif, maybe if you wouldn't mind just repeating the question to make sure everybody can hear that. But yeah, if it's possible to move the mic just a hair closer would be great. But Leif, I think we got the question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I believe the question was, will municipalities be able to add sort of site-specific or regional data to this and feedback into this data layer? And yes, that's entirely the intent. The process, obviously, we don't want to be flagging the CMRB down with monthly updates, and so there would generally be an annual review, and where appropriate, there would be an update to the data set. And when there's been an update to the data, we can rerun the scoring. And yeah, it would basically form a part of the CMRB's open database.
Okay, wonderful. Hoping everyone can hear me now. Mr. Chair, that's one of the only times anyone ever tells me I'm too quiet, so I appreciate that this morning. Appreciate that response, and I think that really touches on one of the points I had here, is just these databases are only as good as how often we update them and review them, so I really appreciate that feedback there as well. So just on the timing, with the timing of the NDP alignment with the growth plan, can you provide a time frame when the data sets will be updated and ready for use?
Sorry, these data sets today and ready for use? The existing data set that we've compiled?
Yes.
Yeah, when's the final?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Basically, I think we're just waiting on board approval at this point. So we should be able to share things, I would say mid-February, that's probably a reasonable scale.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And just two more quick ones. So number one, can this database support establishing a benchmark for ESA health condition?
I think that's potentially something that is a site level assessment, and I think there's always the challenge of making sure that we're not including data sets that are just so restricted to specific areas. So I think it certainly speaks to the functional contribution of areas, but often that actual condition assessment really does require boots on the ground. And so I think there's that balance of making sure that we're incorporating the knowledge we have without sort of biasing it towards areas that we've managed to study. So that's, I think, one of the challenges, is just making sure that we're not feeding in small little piecemeal pieces. But what it does highlight, I think, is the value of sort of more comprehensive inventory work that would certainly be appropriate to include.
Great, thank you very much for that. And then my last question is just, can the database be used for tracking ESA preservation or conservation success moving forward? Yes, I believe so. I think what it does is it gives you a suite of information in terms of what falls within development areas, and that will hopefully that will help to keep track of what may be lost or converted during development, and also then what is preserved through parkland dedication or conservation reserves, or however individual municipalities choose to maintain. Okay, thank you. I appreciate the responses and the work that went into this. Thanks.
Great questions. Thank you, Tina. Councillor Brett Robinson from Okotoks, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I guess I just wanted to make sure I understood. I mean, we weren't given access to the actual database as part of the presentation, right? There wasn't some link or something I missed, or we'd actually be able to go in and look at the database. Did I understand that right?
I'm not sure if it was shared with this group, but through the tag, we have shared the online map tool, and I'd be happy to see that shared more broadly. That's basically, it's an online viewer that allows you to query all the underlying data layers that go into the scoring. There are some data sets that can't be directly shared. We can share the derived scoring that we've made of them, but for things that are restricted access or that have covenants around data sharing agreements that sort of restrict our ability to share them directly with other parties, those would be the only ones that aren't sort of directly available. But the bulk of this information will be available through the CMRB's open data catalog.
Okay, that was going to lead me actually to my next question, was like, what are the like sort of limitations or restrictions that prevent it from being sort of added to the open data portal immediately once the board approves it? Like, is it mostly these legal data sharing issues, or is it technical issues? Like, what's the hang up?
Yeah, I mean, there are certain data sets that, for example, when the province shares their flood inundation zones with us, the data sharing agreement is such that we can't then pass it on to a third party. But what you can do is go to the province. Like, we have a maintained Excel table that identifies who owns the data and who manages it, and with a point of contact. So you can make your own direct request if you need to see the underlying data sets. But all the derived products that come out of this work can be freely shared.
Okay, and Mr. Chair, if I have one more follow-up, is that okay? Okay, and then so essentially we can right away sort of put the high level stuff, the stuff with our ESA scores and that kind of stuff right away onto the public data stuff, but we've got to kind of block sort of the underlying stuff that led to the calculation of the ESA, subject to potentially CMRB going to those service providers like the government of Alberta and saying, hey, actually, can we just include this as a public thing in any event, because you've got it public somewhere as well too. So what's the hang up here essentially?
Yeah, I mean, anything that's currently shared publicly by the province should be no issue for us to share through the CMRB's database. There's about 70 different data sets that went into this, and not all of them are publicly available.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Robinson, our intent right now is to share this data as what our data agreements call member municipality data. So it would go to our member municipalities for their use. Creating a public facing tool is something that would be a follow-up project to this, should the board decide that's important, in part because we need to make sure that the public understands how to use this data appropriately, and to make sure that we're not creating the sense that these are regulatory ESAs that somehow change the development pattern. They're not that at this time. So there's a lot of sensitivity around how this is given to the public. So that's kind of a subsequent project to this one. This data set currently right now is meant to create a common definition among our members on what these ESAs do, where they are, and then allow them to be used in as member municipalities see fit in their own planning processes. So there's some sensitivities around how this is presented to the public and how to make it meaningful and at the right scale. So that's that would be a follow-up project to this one in terms of creating a viewer or some other plain language kind of presentation of that data to the public.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lise. That's fantastic. Good questions. Any other questions or comments anyone wishes to make on the ESA database? And if there are none, I would invite a member to make a motion that the committee recommend to the board for approval the environmentally sensitive areas database. Councillor Carra moves. Do we have a seconder? In Airdrie, Deputy Mayor Petro, thank you. Any debate and discussion on the motion itself? And
just to introduce the motion,
yeah, go ahead.
And or close, I just want to thank both administration, all the tags, and O2 for putting together a really important piece of work. It's, it's not fully complete, but it's an amazing start to a great database for the region. I think it's going to be a very valuable tool moving forward, and I'm delighted at the quality of the work and the scope of the work. And I'm excited to watch it grow over the years. So thank you to everybody who played such a core role in putting it together. please support this.
Thank you, Councillor. That's a great summary. Anyone else before I move to a vote? And if there are none, I'll ask for a show of hands. All those in favor of the motion that committee recommend to the board for approval, environmentally sensitive areas database. And any opposed? None opposed. That carries unanimously. Thank you so much. Great conversation. And thank you again. I echo Councillor Carra's comments. Thanks, Leif. Thanks, Lisa. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Okay,
Chair.
we're on to the water roadmap. We've got a fairly in-depth presentation and discussion here. Jamie Graves is going to take us through that. I just want to check in with everyone. We're 45 minutes into our meeting. Does anyone need a quick break before we move into the next round, or should we just keep rolling? GC, you want to take a little 5-minute break?
Yeah, I went offline for a moment because my heating is out and I need to just run around and do something. So can I come back in like 10 minutes and having handled a bunch of stuff?
Yeah, that seems relatively
it.
important. Well, tell you what, why don't we, the next couple of agenda items are fairly, I think will be some good discussion and lots to consider. So why don't we give ourselves 5 minutes here? Might turn into 6 or 7, and hopefully GC, you can get the heat back on. So we'll come back at, let's call it 9:55, and we'll get rolling into the next agenda item. Are back in session. We'll just give everybody a moment to get situated, get your cameras back on, and then we will move into the discussion on water, which I know obviously is a very important topic. Generally, it's especially relevant and topical and important at the moment. We obviously know the drought situation the province has been facing in the past year, and is shaping up here this next summer to be a very challenging season on a number of different levels. We have two items on the agenda that relate to water. The first is the water roadmap, which is circling back on the conversation we had at a previous meeting on the water roadmap project itself. We recognize, though, that the drought response itself, although ultimately a subset of the water roadmap, is really a standalone item. So there will be some overlap and cross-pollination between these two topics, but we thought we would break them out into two different conversations, the water roadmap being the higher level, longer term discussion. It's multifaceted in its recommendations and approach, and drought response is more targeted to the specific situation that we're addressing here in the immediate term over the next short while. So with that, Jamie, I will turn it over to you for discussion on the water roadmap, and we'll take it from there. Jamie, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair Clark, and good morning to committee members. This morning we bring forward the roadmap update for decision of the committee following the direction of the committee to strengthen the roadmap previously presented in September of last year. The project began in 2022 with the approval of the growth and servicing plan, where the servicing plan recommends updating the water roadmap in the coming years in a way that considers the growth and servicing plans. And so CMRB admin initiated the procurement process in Q4 of 2022, and we retained independent international consultancy ARUP to support the water roadmap update based on their extensive experience in strengthening national, regional, and city region water resilience in many places around the world. The consultant made 6 recommendations. Lisa, would you mind pulling up page 44 of the agenda? The recommendations are not a set of boxes to check, but part of a continuum of work in the coming years as we learn more about how the growth plan and its tools are implemented and as knowledge and conditions evolve in the region. The roadmap is the beginning. And it's important to note that for each of the recommendations, CMRB admin would follow project processes for initiatives of the board as we normally do. So the roadmap was brought into the committee in September, and following a discussion, the committee passed a motion directing administration to strengthen it in areas including providing specific actions, clarity of direction, a fulsome gap analysis, prioritization of outcomes, and a stronger link to the growth plan, and return to the Land Use and Servicing Committee by January of this year. So following the committee meeting, CMRB admin worked with the consultant and with TAG to draft the document and appendices to respond to those direction that you see today, to highlight and elaborate on the areas of the ARUP work to address the committee's direction and to fill what they saw as gaps. So through the work of the TAG since September, the Elevate recommendation has evolved. The September focus of the Elevate recommendation was on water conservation and demand management policy. However, the TAG felt that there are opportunities to elevate and evolve water policy in the region, including in areas or in policy areas pertaining to drought, to flood, to source water protection, and to mitigating risks from climate change. So through the discussions and changes to Elevate, there's a proposed go-forward plan to deal with these matters, that being a shorter-term emerging learnings or implementation that can be addressed for those issues in the nearer-term growth plan update that is due in 2027, but also to identify a longer-term commitment to focusing on key issues within the more complete growth plan update due in 2032. So those updates will consider source water protection, drought, flood, and mitigation of risks from climate change in a way that is commensurate with staff capacity, available knowledge and data, and appropriate scope, and at the sort of larger scale of those growth plan updates. So there's lots of updates to be done in the longer one, perhaps, and we will determine that over time as those projects roll out. So the draft ARIP report was amended to reflect this broadening of the Elevate recommendation. And that's reflected in this report that you see with you today. So I just want to make a note on budgetary estimates. When we were just discussing with TAG how to support the response from direction to committee or by the committee, what we heard was TAG recommended that we consider thinking about how much these initiatives might cost, or what it would take to follow through or action the recommendations. And we wanted to respond to that, but also identify that the order of magnitude budgets for actioning these recommendations should be considered very high level at this time, and they were subject to future scoping steps. But they're presented here to give that sense of resourcing, of level of effort, and that what would be required relative to each other and what is being recommended in terms of level of effort here today. But actioning would be subject again to the CMRB's project management processes and board approval. Following that, just wanted to take a moment to thank the colleagues and my colleagues here at CMRB Admin and member municipalities for their time on this project, the great advice and productive discussions that have happened and brought us here today. So this is an exciting start of our next chapter if approved, and we look forward to hearing the comments from committee today. Mr. Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Jamie. Yeah, I appreciate the update. I know we had a good, robust discussion previous, and really very much appreciate your work going back and digging deeper and clarifying some of the questions that the committee had previous. So, Councillor Koken from Rocky View County, we'll start with you. Go ahead.
Okay, well, yeah, thank you for the presentation, but I'm still quite confused relative to what this Elevate recommendation means. I'm not getting a clear idea as far as the scope definition, as far as what is actually involved, and I see there's a fairly significant price tag associated with it. And so with that price tag and a very unclear scope definition, I'm not sure how the board is even going to think of accepting something like this. I would have thought that there'd be much more clarity as far as indeed what we're trying to accomplish and where these funding requirements, what they are, and who indeed is going to be paying for some of this funding, and what are the eventual benefits that are going to be derived here. It's not clear in the document at all for me, and for the board to see that this could all of a sudden creep up to $5 million when we start doing the study. I'm not sure that they're going to be very willing to even start considering something like this. Could somebody help me as far as understanding as far as what this water management plan is? And also, does it also include, I think it doesn't, mind you, but can somebody verify, does it include also the pipe systems that are in place in today's world?
Jamie, go ahead.
Thanks, Councillor, for the question. And yes, the investigate, as we see it today, would involve a wide range of other stakeholders that would potentially increase the price of completing the work, but also it's a large undertaking. And so to be respectful of the fact that this may be a long-term project and would require significant resources, we do have that sort of large range of cost and price. Additionally, the investigate would require a lot of technical expertise and discussion points and potentially modeling to go through scenarios. And again, having not done a full investigation into the what that price tag and what the scope of that would require, we wanted to make sure we recognize that there is potentially a range of costs, and that you're right, it is significant, but would be very valuable to the region over time.
Okay, so then to understand this, the feasibility study then is going to be, you're recommending that it be activated, and that's just going to be phase one, and nothing proceeds after that until this feasibility study is completed. And I'm assuming that the feasibility study is going to have a pretty robust cost-benefit analysis connected with it, so that the understands as far as what future implications there is to the municipality, and further truly identifying what the benefits to the municipalities are.
Yeah, I think that's something that, given the large price tag on potentially moving forward with that investigate longer term project, that demonstrating the value is absolutely reasonable piece of work that would go into the investigate exploration of what that scope would look like. So that first phase, as you say, feasibility of and checking in with other water users and stakeholders, including the province.
Yeah, and I guess my same comments would apply to item recommendation number 6. It's just not enough clarity as far as indeed what we're trying to accomplish and the benefits back to the municipality. So I think that with this whole document, for me, 1 to 4 look appropriate, but 5 and 6, I think they need quite a bit of work before I think the board should even consider looking at it. But that's my thoughts, and I'd like to hear what other people think.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Koch. And I guess I just on your last point there, and it's something I've been reflecting and wondering a little bit about. So maybe Jamie or Jordan could weigh in on what exactly we're asking the committee to ultimately recommend to the board, ultimately what the board would approve. We're not talking necessarily about committing to a particular spend without much further scrutiny. And as Jamie said, any dollars that would be spent would be associated with a benefit that would be accrued from spending those dollars. But what really we're talking about here is a direction of traction of where we're going. And I guess that's how I view this, but that's me. So Jamie and Jordan and me.
Yeah,
just,
Greg,
go ahead. Sorry, Don, go ahead.
Yeah, Greg, I would some would agree that this is just sort of a roadmap type of thing as far as the phases. But once we get entrenched as far as a direction, unfortunately, once we start down a road, it's pretty hard to stop it. And my feeling on this is that if there's not enough benefit demonstrated as far as up front, I'm not even sure why we'd be starting to go down this road as far as determining the feasibility and inheriting all that or having these municipalities having to come up with this monies, and all of a sudden there's not the benefits to the individual municipalities is not that clear. It could be more beneficial to one municipality versus the other, but I think overall we should be thinking that there should be an overall benefit before the municipalities jump in and share. And I think that's the way the board is going to be looking at it. Jamie, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you very much for the comments and also for Chair Clark. The roadmap, as was noted, is a way to move forward and how we see water in the region and taking the first steps and a lens. And these actions are areas that are beneficial through the research and how other places in the world have responded to regional issues similar to ours. And so this is the roadmap of how we would action those things in real time over time. And like you said, it's the beginning, and but there is a place to investigate how to manage water appropriately over time, and that part of that is working together, and part of that is outlined here in taking steps to further those works. So we can't do nothing. We know that there are learnings that are coming from the ESA database, from the context studies that are ongoing. There may be ways that we can evolve and elevate the policy, the policy environment of the region to further our sustainability, to further our the vision and the values of the board. So that's how this is meant to be reviewed, and we do need to take some direction, because if we don't have a common thread and we're not rowing all in the same direction, it's really difficult to manage those projects in the future. And this is meant to show the general direction that the board is or should be working toward.
Yeah, I could appreciate that. And like I indicated, I think we could support the first 4 recommendations, but no pun intended, the last 2 recommendations, we can elevate that information to get more of an understanding as far as what is indeed required and what we're going to actually accomplish and the benefits to the municipalities. So I'm still very nervous as far as recommending to the board items 5 and 6, because I don't think they've got enough information, and we don't even have enough information to say that it's valued as far as going forward.
Okay, Don, thank you very much. We've got a good long speaking list here. We'll go to Deputy Reeve Waldorf, Foothills County. Don, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Yeah, definitely very interesting. And we too have some questions and concerns I get on what we're trying to accomplish with this coordination effect. Ms. Graves spoke about budget considerations, but also the level of effort. And I guess I'm only asking because the province is coordinating the drought response. We've heard from Minister Schultz numerous times over the last few weeks. I'm sure many of us around this table have heard Environment and Protected Areas Regulatory Assurance Manager Darren Bouget's presentation. I know I've seen it a couple of times, even most recently as a week or 2 ago in Lethbridge, where it's been updated. Some 60% of Canada's irrigation occurs in southern Alberta. Many of Foothills County residents use well water and utilize septic systems. It's forefront for us. Foothills County declared an agricultural disaster last spring, ahead of most. We have intermunicipal agreements in place. For example, if High River mandates water restrictions, so does Foothills County. So I guess where I'm zeroing in on, our actions need to be effective, helpful, and meaningful, and not just repeating what we're hearing from the province, because of course we're all in this, and there seems to be a lot of work. So to be spending more money and just duplicating what's already been done, we're certainly questioning it as well. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, I think we will have an opportunity to have a deeper discussion on the drought response specifically in our next agenda item, and so although water drought obviously are this common topic, but that we'll have an opportunity to have a more specific conversation on what we may or may not do on the drought piece there. I don't know, Jamie or Jordan, if you want to weigh in on this specifically, or if we can keep rolling down the list. And
I have nothing to offer.
Okay,
yet.
perfect. Thank you. We'll go to Deputy Mayor Petro. Tina, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have one question, but just a couple comments first, and these will probably span this item and the next one because they're so closely related here. But I think, just to one of the points raised earlier, like this is an evolving process, and I think there's so many steps to this still coming ahead of us. This is like the first step to take to get to this place, but it's such a beneficial place to get to. I think, when we look at even the agriculture disaster that was declared last year, I mean, I know as an elected official, when that happened, I kind of felt powerless at our end to do anything to help. But I think that was very, if we don't have that regional approach and we don't have that common messaging and that common language across the region, it's very challenging to really focus on that water conservation. And I know in Airdrie, I think we saw a 9.49% decrease in our water conservation during August to October. So doing our best here, but that would have been so much better had we had that common messaging across the region. I mean, when we look at just the daily migration of our residents, jurisdictional boundaries really have no meaning. So this work is so vital to the region and for so many reasons, and it's cost savings for residents, it's cost savings for municipalities. It is the environmental benefits as well as that security piece when we talk about whether that's food security or whether that's just talking about having adequate water sources for our people. So just wanted to kind of put that out there because this is very vital work that we're doing, and I know we're not there yet, but this is a great step to get there. And I appreciate the work and the expedited timeframe that staff and the tags did to get us to this point from where we were when this came forward last time. So I think our only real question is about resourcing. I know it's touched on in Appendix 4. It kind of says municipal resource time is estimated to be both specific and at municipal discretion. So it's very vague as to what that looks like. So we're hoping that more concrete estimates of time would be included as this develops and gets forward to the board level. But just asking, will CMRB administration take resourcing into account when proposing the next steps to the board?
Yeah, good question. Jamie or Jordan, do you want to address that question about resourcing?
Yeah, I can take it. So thank you very much for the commentary and the question. We do have, and as part of our chartering processes and initiatives that we bring to the board to kick off any opportunity to begin something new and to spend, the funds of the board, we do require to bring a charter forward. And so that would absolutely be part of the next steps on this work. Approval of this roadmap as it sits is not necessarily a approval of all the detailed budget spends here. Those would come as a next step and sort of in an individual, recommendation by recommendation basis and at the sort of priority, either recommended here or some other priority of the board. So just to answer that spot. And then secondly, about resourcing, we have heard many times about the resourcing of people and not only on ourselves and also in member municipalities. So the intention would be to design the program in such a way as to be responsive to the realities that we are all facing in terms of resourcing. So that is absolutely a consideration to answer your question very briefly. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Petro.
Thanks, Jamie.
Great, thanks, Jamie. Yeah, resourcing obviously always a big important question in everything we're going to take on here, given the skeleton staff that we have. Councillor Robinson from Okotoks, go ahead.
I guess my first question is, when you were doing the advocacy recommendations, what did you guys do to determine what advocacy might be being done by either member municipalities or other groups we're a part of, including like Alberta municipalities, rural municipalities of Alberta, all the different environmental things we might be part of, like Bow Valley and all that kind of stuff. Like, what work was done in that regard?
Thanks for the question. So this recommendation came from as I was mentioning earlier, the consultant that when a city region is facing very unique challenges and very unique context, the collective voice can be very effective at other orders of government. There were some examples of that in various places, but because we, the CMRB, represent almost 6 million people of Alberta, I think that behooves the province to consider what their perspective might be. And so from that, the idea is that grabbing the attention of the policymakers and of the province is helpful in managing and solving problems that are very contextually challenging and also have a broad effect on many Albertans, but not all.
So is that answer none?
No, we were looking at, we connected with a number of BRBC, of other groups that do advocacy work, and they acknowledge that yes, a strong regional voice does help move and advance the priorities of a group, and therefore a convening body and using an advocacy role does make sense. And so yes, we did talk to other organizations, not necessarily on their every single individual project that they're working through. But I think what is true is that there are unique considerations at the regional scale, and that's worth amplifying at the government and at the provincial level.
Okay. Can I ask another question, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
I just want to ask about the common messaging part of the recommendations. Like, if I'm understanding the recommendation correctly, the first step is to come up with like a common message that all the members of the CMRB can agree on. Am I understanding that part of the recommendation accurately?
Are we talking about advocate or are we talking about promote?
No, promote.
Okay. Yes, so the idea is to generate messaging in a way that is applicable to all member municipalities and all, people that work, live, and play in these areas. And the reason being, there are various ways that water is managed at the local scale. Perhaps it's with outdoor watering restrictions, perhaps it's with other types of xeriscaping rebates, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The purpose is not necessarily to highlight the detail at the local scale, but to elevate the public's perception and understanding of the context that we live in, and that water doesn't respect the municipal boundaries that we live in. And so to elevate the public's perception of their influence also on what can be done, given the state that we find ourselves in, is a super important part of the promote aspect.
Right, but I think the question was, is the first part of that, if I'm understanding accurately, is that for someone to come up with like what the common message to promote is?
Yes.
Okay, and then what happens if we can't do that?
I suppose we'd have to have a discussion among the board. I think we will find a way to generate messaging that will be across the region is the objective.
Jordan, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. Thanks, Greg. Councillor, what is your concern? Like if we have one member that doesn't agree with water messaging, that we won't do anything, or I'm just trying to figure out what the concern is.
Well, I just, the idea is we're going to promote some message, but we don't say what the message it is we're going to promote is, when it seems to me that the core, like that's the bigger issue. Like we need to decide first what is the core water message that as a region the CMRB is going to promote, and then we can talk about what like the budget and those sorts of things are. But it's somewhat in the presentation, but it's a bit vague, I would suggest, exactly what it is we would, as a CMRB, say about these sorts of things, outside of what, the specifics that we talk about in terms of the member municipalities, like, the water restrictions, all those kinds of things. And then, outside of the lobbying efforts in terms of all the drought stuff. Like we're saying we should go promote some idea, but we haven't yet decided on what the idea we ought to promote is.
Right. So thank you very much for the comment. It really helps me understand your concern. So I think how can I put this? The way to view this document is does the board agree that they want to work together on water issues? And when we brought in AIR up, they said this is the best bang for your buck in terms of dividing it up into these types. Now, we recognize as we go forward, as raised by Councillor Koken, I should say, that as we go forward, there is another step to say, okay, so for investigate, it could be a significantly expensive undertaking. Does that give us the best value for our dollar at this time? When we bring forward a project charter on that, it will have much more detail about this. But this is really kind of I would say the recommendations from the consultants in terms of the best way to work together as a region. So on promote, it is to work together in terms of messaging. What exactly is that messaging would be actually the work of engaging into that stream of work and then going forward from there.
Okay.
Okay, Evan. Thanks. Thank you for that. We'll go on to Mayor Janung from Cochrane. Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Lots of great discussion here this morning. Obviously an important topic, and I appreciate all the work that's been done from CMRB staff. Excellent document. And I think part of what I'm hearing my colleagues say this morning is a next step. I think how I view the document, and Jordan, you started to touch on this in your last answer there to Councillor Robinson, but I think most of us, me included, want to just jump in and get busy doing the work. And this is really a document that outlines what we need to do. And if I'm understanding it correctly, we'll have an opportunity as a board, and again, probably as a committee, once it's gone through the board and eventually agreed upon will be, say, if we can pick and choose one of the recommendations. We don't have to do them all. We don't have to do them all concurrently, but we can pick and choose. And then as we pick them, there will be more work required and more defining of the scope of each of those recommendations that we will also have another chance to discuss around budget or path forward, or even deflect slightly from what's proposed today. Am I understanding this process correctly?
Yes, 100%.
Yes. I love the answer. So succinct. That was good. With that, I think this is exactly what we need to send back up to the board. I feel comfortable in the high levelness of it, so it's not too prescriptive, but it is a path forward. We talk about water all the time. We all agree that it is something we need to start to action. I would hate for us to get bogged down in, too much more detail in what this high level document needs to be, and get our act together and start actioning some of these. So with the understanding that we can visit this in the future a little bit more, I think some of the hesitations or even the concerns that I'm hearing around the table will be addressed at that next step. And again, like drought, flood, water licensing, all of those things are provincial or other jurisdictions. The two things that I would like to see us focus on and get started on quicker than not is the servicing and the pipes. So I really value that last number 6, the investigate. And I think from a board perspective, and if I go back to early days around the CMRB table, that was one of the things we highlighted early on as something we really wanted to focus on. So we're not putting a pipe over each other in cross jurisdictions, and really it's less about the amount of water. We'll deal with that at another scope. It's not so much who's treating it. That might be in another one of these buckets, but and pardon that pun, but the investigate how we can collaborate, save regional dollars, and build something once that services more than less is something that I think we really need to focus on. So I think this document gets us there. It's not exactly perfect, but that the refining process can happen at a later date. So appreciate the work, and I think we need to start moving forward. Thank you, Chair.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Councillor Carra, GC, you're up. Go ahead.
After Mayor Janung's statements, I don't think I actually have to say anything. I did stand and when this was last at committee and say it's too vague. It doesn't give us a strong enough sense of direction. It's not meeting the mandate. Everyone went away, did a bunch of work, and I'm comfortable supporting this. It's, as everyone said, it's not perfect, but it is a clear roadmap of things that the CMRB can and should do in the essential realm of water. I will also just note, sort of as color commentary, the only possible silver lining of the punishing drought that I fear we're going to be facing for the next season or seasons is that it will help us galvanize the political will to do upstream flood and drought mitigation on the Bow River, which will be essential for the long-term survival of this region. And having this roadmap in place in the way it is, I think, gives enough direction that the CMRB will be able to help bring the collective voice of the region to the provincial table where that money has to be spent. And so it's time to get moving. As I said, Mayor Janung said everything that needed to be said. We're at the City of Calgary is appreciative of the work that's gone into it since it was sent back, and we're happy to support this. And we're looking forward to moving forward, because water is the most important thing facing this region over the long term, and certainly in the short term as we face a potentially punishing drought.
Thank you, Councillor Carra. We've got Reeve Kissel up next. Go ahead. Crystal, you're up.
Thank you, and good morning, board. So there's a couple things that I myself would like to understand. Number one is where we are on the work list of things approved. And how's our funding working out? When we talk about what's presented before us, I think 1 to 4 are absolutely appropriate. I think we should be having conversations. We should be sharing best practices and lessons learned. And Okotoks, of course, I think they could share a lot of information with us because they've been grappling with this. I do believe that this has a place, but I'm not sure that to take it to the level of 5 and 6, that we're ready to do that. And we have to know a lot more. But I do believe 1 to 4 is definitely, let's see what we can do. If the CMRB admin is willing to take the information that we get from all the municipalities, everyone's going to have a story. And Cochrane sure had theirs this year about water and waste. So we would, I think that would be an absolute brilliant start. Let's look at our work list that's approved and see where it's at. I think we have more than heard loud from the administration of the CMRB that they are limited in staff and that just continuing to pile on the work is maybe not the best answer. But I think they chose to facilitate to help us organize the information and get it out to each municipality. And there will be things that won't apply. There will be things that we can go, you know what? I actually want to have a bigger conversation with that mayor and their tech team. So I think for me, there's a part of it that's absolutely let's get going. But the other 5 and 6, I think we need to sit back and see what we get from 1 to 4 before we even start throwing money at this. And let's make sure that we're not doing anything that the province is already doing. Because remember, they're using our tax dollars to do this. So we don't want to spend double the tax dollars on the same thing. So that's my opinion on this. And it's a super interesting conversation. And I do believe there's lessons to be learned here.
Okay, Crystal, thank you very much. There's a couple of things I'll put over then maybe to Jordan or Jamie, because there's a sequencing question here and a question about exactly what are we committing to if we're recommending to the board that they approve this. What exactly is the commitment? What future stage gates might be in place? And then that's a very important question around resourcing amongst CMRB staff and potential impacts, as it relates to everything else we've got on our list. So I'll throw that over to Jamie or Jordan, whoever wants to take that, or both of you. Go ahead.
Thanks, Chair Clark. So the recommended first few actions, I think there was 3 of the 6 that we were going to action in the next 6 months. First being advocate, also beginning to elevate, looking back into what it would mean to start gathering best practice for water policy and the learnings that may have come out of some of the discussions at the context studies and in other joint planning areas and priority growth areas, preferred growth areas. And that would be the first place that we would start, is looking at those areas. And then the third, thank you, Lisa, being the convene. Beginning to host something like a speaker series to sort of level set and provide some discussion and get some inertia behind specifically, I think we said drought, but could be any particular topic. And we were over the years thinking that this would happen annually, but based on the outcomes, we can reassess. So to your question, Reeve Kissel, what would be the outcome of approving this? We still have to come to the board with budgets and approvals. So by moving this up to the board, and if the board approves it, it still needs an extensive scoping and budgeting process for each one. But the overall approach of how we look at water in the region and the recommendations that we received from the external consultant that's worked worldwide, what this opportunity represents for the board and for the region, that is what is represented in those 6 recommendations. So just moving, this is a place to start, is essentially what the cause of approving it would be.
Good. Thank you, Jamie. Appreciate that. Deputy Reed Waldorf from Foothills County up next, followed by Councillor Koken.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I must apologize. Maybe it was a lousy choice of words when I talked about some drought response, but I see a real, I guess maybe some overlap in this item and the next item. Is it our mandate to promote water conservation messaging? I'm disappointed to hear today from a couple of the mentions that we need to get moving on this. I think we've already started it, and many of us are already working together. So again, I think this is a very good discussion this morning. But again, is it really the mandate of the CMRB to be dealing with water messaging? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think I was going to ask for this slide to come up. I think when you look at the growth plan, the bottom part of that, pretty clear that that's within our mandate, both from the growth plan as well as from the our overall mandate in what the minister's asked us to tackle. And so this is the outcome of how we're going to achieve those objectives from the growth plan. Obviously, entirely up to the committee and the board exactly how we choose to address that. But to answer that question, yeah, this is part of our mandate. Is water a very obviously important part given what we're looking at here in the spring. Councillor Koken, you're up. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. The more I hear the discussion that's happening going around, I don't think that this document is ready to be sent forward to the board, because there's not a common understanding as far as indeed what this document is going to be intended to accomplish. Mayor Jung indicated that he believes that recommendation number 6 covers the evaluation of regional pipe system. And at our council governance committee yesterday, Mr. Clark and Mr. Copping indicated that the pipe system wasn't to be considered as part of this water roadmap. So I think there's a confusion as far as indeed what is exactly going to be accomplished in this and what are the benefits of this plan. And I think more work has to be done on 5 and 6 before we actually even proceed.
It's a good question. Jordan, do you want to pick up that question about the pipe servicing specifically?
Yeah, James, do you want to start off and then I can jump in?
Yep, gladly. So what we found with the discussion and the way that the growth plan is structured and the servicing plan, given the fact that there are 9,000 square kilometers in the CMR and that there are very local contexts and different growth rates and requirements for each municipality, that municipalities are the best and they have already plans and finances and requirements, responsibilities related to pipe servicing, whether it be source water removal, their water licensing, an APIA approval to operate a water treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant. Those things are all at the local scale, and to do a regional approach may not be the best approach for the region at this time. And that is the local context is much more refined, well-known, and that the municipalities around a particular municipality might be the best place to plan for pipe servicing and major infrastructure upgrades and the like. The reason for the fact that we do not have the piped services and wastewater treatment plants, et cetera, inside the roadmap is because those are not the best use of municipal or the regional board's time, effort, and energies. It would be difficult to triage various projects and needs based on the values of the board. And so at this time, that is the recommendation, and that was verified through the consultant as well, given our mandate. Jordan, did you want to add?
No, James, I think you covered it there. Thanks.
Okay, great. Perfect. That's great, Jamie. Thank you so much. All right, so we have exhausted the speaking list at the moment. So the motion as recommended in the agenda is that the committee recommend to the board approval of the water roadmap update. That would be, I guess, about where we are on the agenda, but I wanted to just throw that out to the committee, invite perhaps at this point someone to make that motion. Anyone willing to make that or any other motion? Have we got, oh, there you are, folks in Airdrie, thank you. Deputy Mayor Petro moves. And second, Mayor Janung, thank you very much. So on the motion, the committee recommend to approval of the board water roadmap update. We'll have any further discussion on that motion. Councillor Robinson from Okotoks. Brent, go ahead. And followed by Deputy Reeve or Councillor Kogan. Go ahead, Brent. Oh, you're on mute if you're talking there.
Yeah. Once every meeting, right? So I'm going to vote in favor of sending this up to the board. I think like the elevate, investigate, convene, and the other part 5, convene, enable, elevate, and investigate recommendations are all well within the core mandate of the board and exactly what CMRB ought to be doing and should be sending along. I will express skepticism still about the advocate and promote recommendations because, you know, I think we're doing a lot of stretching of what the part of the growth plan we're relying on to promote. You know, it talks about collaborating to identify higher and consistent water efficiency and identify opportunities to improve water efficiency. I'm not sure that's exactly what people had in mind under the growth plan when they drafted that how we're going to improve water efficiency is to sort of collectively berate our collective communities in order to have them use less water. So, you know, I'm skeptical that anyone in Okotoks is going to pay any more attention about how much water they're using because someone slaps a CMRB logo on some sort of piece of social media or a radio ad or whatever that comes out. So I think there's some skepticism about that. In terms of the advocate piece, you know, I know that the specific part of the growth plan talks about advocacy, talks about protection of headwaters, but we've put a whole bunch of other things in this advocate recommendation that go well beyond that. And also, like in particular, I think we're going to be duplicating some efforts. I noticed one of the things it talks about is a stormwater reuse, which is, you know, some that Alberta municipalities are already doing. So I'm skeptical that sort of recycling an advocacy dollar through CMRB changes anything when we're, you know, using municipality dollars through Alberta municipalities and our own resources to advocate on those same pieces. So I'm skeptical of those two pieces, but the other four I think are important, and the water stuff is important in general. So we got to send it on. I'll leave it to the board to make the final decision about that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kogan, you're up next. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, thank you. As I indicated earlier, the first four recommendations are fine, and I think that possibly they get some value to the municipalities as far as exercising them. But I don't think that we've still got a common understanding as far as what 5 and 6 mean. And like 5, it says investigate. Under the investigate thing is to investigate feasibility of implementing a regional long-term water resource. Well, I don't think we've got a clear definition of what that long-term water resource planning is. And we're talking a regional approach, and yet we're not talking a piped system would be included as far as that consideration. And I just don't think that there's enough information for us to consider for it. So 5 and 6 is, to me, should be out. And I think that we would certainly support 1 to 4. And I think that we should work on 5 and 6 as far as clearer definitions, the cost implications, the funding sources, and actually outlining the benefits to the municipalities accordingly before we send it to the board. So I'd be willing to send items 1 to 4 to the board, but certainly not 5 and 6.
Can I ask, we have a look at slide 45, which is the one after the flow chart that we've been looking at. because it speaks to the resourcing. There we go. And just and again, this is a potential roadmap. It's not necessarily fixed or set in stone, but I think it on some of your points, it speaks to both the resourcing piece in terms of a requirement to procure that support, and then the stage gates that each one of these would go through. So I just wanted to point that out as a potential just another layer of information for everyone as we move through this motion here. And as we do that, Mayor Janun, Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I think we're on the same page. And I think some of the concerns that you're outlining, Councillor Koken, are valid. Same with Councillor Robinson. And I believe this document allows for those concerns to be addressed. Still, I think maybe instead of voting against sending it to the board, and again, I'm not trying to rush things here, but I think exactly what you've outlined will be, and I think Chair Clark is trying to highlight that with bringing up the slide that's in front of us, is that actually the deep dive into those, and if I was mistaken on the pipes in the ground being part of the investigate stage, well, maybe we'll have an opportunity to talk about that and actually include that if we wish as a board, or follow the recommendation in front of us. So I think the conversations and the nuances that we're looking for happen at the next step. So I'm still comfortable moving this to the board.
Okay, perfect. Is there anyone else wish to weigh in? Oh, Jordan, go ahead.
Yeah, just to echo and maybe reinforce the fact that approving this document, the roadmap, does not automatically approve charters or budget. We would come back with a very specific scoping document that would then contain much more, level of effort and much more, I would say, precise budget. But as is being evidenced by this conversation, there's a massive diversity of opinion around the board table. Or around the region, I should say, as evidenced by the conversation around the committee table. And that's exactly why we wanted to bring forward this scoping document, is to highlight that. And when we come back with the charters in terms of, advocate, convene, enable, promote, elevate, and investigate, much more detailed, and will give the board the opportunity to add or remove items in those charters as they see fit.
Perfect. Thank you for that summary, Jordan. That's great. So if there are no further comments, they will move into a vote on the motion that the committee recommend to the board for approval of the water roadmap update. And I will ask for a show of hands. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. And Dawn, is that a vote in favor or a hand up? Don Koken. Oh, you've just gone on to mute. Don Koken, sorry, you're on mute if you're speaking.
Okay, no, I'm not certainly supporting it. I just I wanted to make a comment before the vote was called.
Okay, well, we can unring the bell here. We'll pause the vote. I'll give you a chance to weigh in. So
okay,
go ahead.
I just wanted to make a mention that we're indicating now all of a sudden the board is going to have to make this massive decision. Well, how is the board expected to make this massive decision when we're not giving the board enough information to understand as far as what this whole roadmap is all about? 5 and 6 is very unclear, and the board is going to go and spinning their wheels again as far as getting an understanding as far as what they're committing to. This is a huge commitment. I don't know why we're not taking it more seriously. That I understand that some of it can actually eventually evolve to about a $5 million price tag. So where is this funding source coming from? And so I think that we're foolish as far as sending this to the board, and we should consider just sending it the first 4 recommendations, revisit the last 2, and provide some more clear guidance to the board as far as what they should be considering. So I'm definitely not going to be supporting this motion as written. I could support an amended motion that we send the first 4 recommendations, but certainly not all 6.
Okay, no, thank you. I think that's good information for administration here is pending the outcome of what this committee recommends as we get prepared to talk with the board on this. So again, one last call if anyone has any other comments before we finally move into a vote. And seeing and hearing none, I will ask again for a vote on the motion the committee recommend to the board approval of the water roadmap update. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. And opposed? Okay, and that motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we're now into our next agenda item being drought response. I wonder if everybody, how we're doing. Do we want another quick 5-minute bio break before we move into the last part of the agenda? Am I seeing some nodding heads yes, or are we ready to just keep rolling? Okay, no, we're going to keep going. All right, we'll keep going, get through this agenda. Sounds great. Jamie, you're back up. Talk about drought response. Obviously a very important discussion here. And again, building on what we just talked about, or certainly some comments on the drought piece. So I will turn it over to you and off we go. Go ahead.
Thanks, Chair Clark. So this agenda item is brought forward in response to the minister's letter to municipalities, which is very related, but not the same as the water roadmap. So the purpose is to socialize the idea of working together on a response through the CMRB, if that is of interest to member municipalities. And we would work with your technical advisory folks to consider what that might look like and bring back an approach in the future for your response. So any questions, I'm happy to answer.
All right, Jamie, short and sweet intro. Thank you very much for that. We'll start with Deputy Mayor Petro in Airdrie, followed by Councillor Koken and Rocky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will try and keep this as short as possible as well. Just one question, I'm not sure if you'll have the answer to this, but we're curious if precipitation is measured on the river basin area, or if it's measured on a regional, geographical, municipal type area. So just, if the CMR receives enough precipitation, but the SSRB overall does not, is the entire basin rated as a stage 5?
That's a great question. My understanding of the way those the monitoring stations currently work is there's a number of various data points that are received by the province that are owned and managed, their data stations. They include inflow measurements. They include snow pillows. So up in the headwaters and in the Rocky Mountains, they have measurements that allow them to model what and how much snowpack we have, and to get a sense of whether that means we're in a drought situation or not. But that I don't have that information offhand. That's a lot of it is in the Rivers app, but I would assume that the province would update folks regularly on the situation. Jordan, you have your mic on, so maybe you have more information.
I do not. I was about to say I have no ability to respond to that question, but Jamie, you did, so thank you.
Teamwork makes the dream work. Thank you. I appreciate the response, Jamie. Tina, does that answer your question, folks in Airdrie?
That does. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. Okay, Councillor Koken, you're up next. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I just wanted to, on this CMRB involvement, is it my understanding that you guys are just simply going to be collecting information and getting the wealth of information from the different municipalities, especially Okotoks, and then just sharing that information for other municipalities to consider? Because I think the recommendation says something about coordinate a region-wide drought preparation plan. And I didn't think that we were actually going to develop a plan. I thought we were just simply going to be sharing information, and then the individual municipalities develop their own plan accordingly. Is it coordinate, or are we just sharing information?
We could be a convening body. We would act sort of as project managers, if you will, to bring the tag groups together, have a discussion of what current efforts include and whether collaboration on that point makes sense, and we can report back to the committee.
So am I to interpret that what you just said, that you're just collecting information and just disseminating it, and the municipalities utilize it accordingly?
We could receive that, and also other recommendations from the tag members if they have some.
Okay, thanks.
Greg, you're on mute.
Oh, damn it. It's been a few meetings since I've done that. So sorry. Yeah, I'm just asking if Jordan and if you wanted to add anything aside from noting that I'm on mute.
No, I think Jamie covered it off. The reason that the motion is worded this way is that if, let's say, TAG agrees upon an action, that we would then bring it back to the committee and then to the board, which may be more than just providing information around the region.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, a couple more. Councillor Carra, followed by Mayor Janung. GC, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we're very supportive of the CMRB sort of playing a convening role. I'm wondering if maybe an adjustment to the recommendation that's before us, where we switch the word coordinate for the word support, might land better with the rest of the region's municipalities. I'll throw it out there and propose it if people feel more inclined to be supportive of this work if we do that.
Okay, good suggestion. Thank you very much. Mayor Janung, followed by Councillor Koken. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I like that suggestion, Councillor Carra. I think what I'm hearing and what I'd like to support is obviously we're open and free to action any individual effort, I guess, as municipalities in this, but I think there's some value in having a coordinated voice or message to our communities throughout the region. So I'm not sure what the motion would read to the board, but I think there's some, obviously this is impacting all of us, and there is a provincial jurisdiction here, but we have been asked to, raise our voice together. So I think there's, just under the umbrella of, we're stronger together, I think that there's got to be some action involved with the CMRB in utilizing our collective voice. So I think, again, there's overlap here, and I don't want to reinvent the wheel or do something else that another jurisdiction's doing, but I think this is going to require a collaborative effort amongst all of our municipalities without overreach into telling each one of us what to do. But I think a collective voice in what we are doing or what we can do together is important at this time. So maybe Councillor Carra's shift in language achieves that. I'm not sure, but I'm interested to hear what the rest of my colleagues have to say on the matter. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Councillor Koken, you're up. Interested in your perspective on the proposed wording change. See if that addresses what you're thinking, and frankly, anything else. Go ahead.
Yes, I was certainly like the idea where Councillor Carra was going on this. I think adding the word support or share information, same type of concept, I think is a more suitable word than coordinate. So I'll certainly support Councillor Carra as far as replacing coordinate with support, and I think we've got a good recommendation going forward.
Fantastic, thank you. And I'll just note, Deputy Mayor Petro from Airdrie notes they're good with the support on the word support as well. We'll go to Councillor Robinson. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm happy with that wording change too. I'm not sure it changes the material direction we're asking the board to take, but that's fine. I think in general though that this is well within the core mandate of the CMRB and what we need to be doing as communities to work together. No one community as an island is going to be able to do the things necessary to protect their communities from sort of the environmental situation we're likely to be facing in the upcoming year. I'm sure we've all had the same presentations from Alberta Environment about what's happening. We're all looking at similar types of data about what the snowpack's doing up in the mountains. So I think it's important that this body be used as part of that coordination between our communities for the betterment of all our people. So I'll be supporting as revised, and let's carry on.
Okay, so it sounds like we're gaining a little momentum here behind this proposed revised motion. Councillor Kochen, I see your hand up. Is that from before, or is that a new one?
That's from before.
All right, so we have exhausted our speaking list. Oh, no, we've got Deputy Reeve Waldorf. Go ahead. Go ahead, Don.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Very shortly or very quickly, we cannot support the motion, as I believe we're already working together, and this is just a duplication of other efforts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Carra, I believe you are in a position to move this motion unless there's any further discussion, and certainly introducing a motion does not preclude us from having even further discussion. So, GC, would you wish to move?
Yeah, so for procedural simplicity, appreciate everyone weighing in. I would like to, rather than amend the motion on the floor and wait for a mover and everything, I would just propose to move the motion as amended. So rather than the recommendation from administration, just do this. I think we've had good conversation. I understand that some people are reluctant to have CMRB operate in this vicinity, but I completely stand with members of this committee who have suggested that this is right in the core wheelhouse of the CMRB's mandate, and we're in for punishing times, and it's important that we raise our voices collectively, and this is a body that has been convened specifically to do that. So I will listen if there's any debate, but please support this. It's the right thing to do.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Carra. Okay, so Councillor Carra moves that the committee recommend that the board direct CMRB administration to work together with member municipal administrations to support region-wide drought preparation actions. Moved by Councillor Carra. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Robinson. Thank you very much. No, Councillor Kochen, I think you tried to get your hand in there for a second. So, or are you wishing to speak? So we'll open it up for anyone who wishes to speak.
No, I have already voted.
I'm afraid they're going to have to ask you again. So we'll then move to vote. Moved by Councillor Carra, second by Councillor Robinson, that the committee recommend that the board direct CMRB admin to work together with member municipal administrations to support region-wide drought preparation actions. Can I ask for a vote? All those in favor, please. And any opposed? One opposed. All right, that motion carries. Thank you so much. Great. Okay, that was that drought and water discussion. A good, again, robust conversation on a very, very important topic for all of us. On to briefly our board strategic initiatives update. We like to provide every time at this point in the agenda. Jamie, perhaps you can just take us through that. Go ahead.
Glad to, Mr. Chair. At every meeting, we bring this forward to bring the committee or the board up to date with where the projects are at. And this is the current one. It hasn't changed much since December, as I'm sure you can imagine. But we are happy to answer questions if you have any questions specifically about any of the projects that are ongoing presently.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions, comments on the Board Strategic Initiatives Update dashboard? If there are none, I would invite a motion that the committee receive for information and update on the board's initiatives. Easy for me to say. Mayor Janung, Councillor Kochen, you got in there. Moved by Mayor Janung, seconded by Councillor Kochen, the board receive for information and update on board initiatives. All those in favor? And any opposed? None opposed. Carries unanimously. Thank you so much. All right, we are next together as Land Use and Servicing on this very virtual platform on Thursday, 14th March, 2024, 9 a.m. Our next board meeting is Friday, 9th of February, 9:30 in the morning in the beautiful city of Airdrie. Road conditions are promised to be fantastic for our northernmost meeting location. Governance Committee meeting online, 9 a.m. Friday, 8th of March on GoToMeeting. And unless there's anything else anyone wishes to share, the agenda being exhausted, I declare this meeting terminated.